Good evening, everyone, and hello from Brussels and from Belgium. As you can see from my window behind, it's very dark here, and I know some of you around the world are listening to us, so maybe you're enjoying some rays of sunshine. So I'm Ségolène. I'm the CEO of Kantify. We are an AI startup based in Brussels, and I'm the ambassador of Women in AI for Belgium. And in Belgium, we have a specificity is that we have the headquarters of the EU institutions, so we have close links with the work that is going on for AI in the field of AI policy. I'm really super happy, super excited as well, because I feel that AI policy is really a great topic to have for this Women in AI Global Summit. I've been in the field of both policy and AI for a while, and I've seen and felt, and this is maybe something we are going to discuss tonight, that the link between both is getting closer and closer, and so it's good and it's really useful, and it's fantastic to have our speakers tonight with us to enlighten us about what is going on and give us the key to understand these links between artificial intelligence and policy making and regulation. So thank you to our two experts and soon three experts, because Laura is trying to join us from in different ways. So she's exploring technology in its deepest details now. But thank you already to Irina, Orssich and Eline Chivot, who are based in, both of you, you're based in, and Laura is also joining, so that's perfect. Congrats, Laura, for debugging your issues. And Laura Galindo-Romero. So Irina is a team leader, artificial intelligence at the European Commission. You studied law, if I'm not mistaken, and you have a post-degree in European integration. You have worked in the Investitionsbank in Berlin, and you have had quite a lot of interesting positions at the European Commission. And currently, you will speak perhaps in more detail about what you do right now. But you're clearly part of the teams of the ones who are thinking about the future and the rules regarding AI policy in the European Commission, so for the European Union. Laura, apart from being a very good debugger, and you are a member of the CDP artificial intelligence team at the OECD in Paris. And part of your work is to analyze national AI policies in not less than 60 countries. So I guess your days are very full, and you're also involved in the activities of the OECD network on AI, and you hold a master in law from Stanford Law School, and you are a qualified lawyer. And Eline, we have known each other for a while, and I think you were even at the launch event of Women in AI in Belgium, and so you are a well-known figure in the world of artificial intelligence in Brussels and beyond. So thank you as well for joining us. You are a senior policy analyst at the Center of Data Innovation, and you focus on European technology policy issues. And how policymakers can promote digital innovation in the European Union. So we are also very aligned in terms of topic for tonight. And you earned a master's degree in political science and another one in strategic management and business administration. So thanks a lot. So as you can see, dear audience, we have really the experts on board tonight. And before jumping to the core of our event and our debate and learning really more about what is going on and what are the stakes and what are the rules and policies that are being discussed at European level and beyond. I would like to ask a very first question beyond the person and beyond the name and beyond the picture we see today, I would like to ask you, perhaps each of you, to tell me briefly how you came to the word of artificial intelligence. Was it like something you did on purpose? Was it life who brought you there? What is your link? What is your story with AI? Eline, can I ask you to share, to start?
Yes, of course, and thank you so much for your kind words and for this wonderful summit. I know it was a great team effort, and I think you can be very proud of it. And it's an honor to really be there with you. So thanks for the invitation. To answer your question, I came to AI, let's say, on purpose and tech policy in general, because I knew it was a growing field of interest in policy, particularly in Brussels. And I just found it intriguing because at the time I didn't know much about it. And I think the complexity of the views and the arguments about it were appealing to me, because there's always lots to read and to learn about. So it's a very stimulating field intellectually. And to tell you the truth, now I feel the same towards quantum computing. It's still uncharted territory, but I'd like to sort of expand my readings and my interests, and perhaps what is one of the next big things to follow.
Okay, thank you, Eline. So I hope you will have even longer weekends or longer days to be able to expand to this new field, because I know you're working already quite a lot. Irina, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, first of all, also thank you very much for having me here and to be part of this super interesting Global AI Summit. Actually, for me, it was a bit of coincidence. So I also thought that this was a very, very exciting topic, and I have been reading here and there, and I'm probably also one of the persons who had some experience with all novels or movies. So this was something I felt, this is now happening, this is the real world. And I was ready to change job. And then I basically got the opportunity to apply for this job. And I was super excited, and I got the job. So very happy, a bit of coincidence, a lot of interest, and good that I'm there. But I don't think that this kind of tech issue was something which anybody would have thought like 10 or 15 years ago that I would go to such a subject. Okay, so a good story as well, and good anticipation. Good coincidence, rather, and a bit of everything, actually. Thank you, Irina. What about you, Laura?
At first, thank you very much, Ségolène, and all the team of Women in AI for this great global summit. I have followed a lot of sessions this morning, and now I'm very happy to be here. And thank you also for my panelists, Eline and Irina. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on AI. Well, my story is, I was actually finishing my master's degree at Stanford, and I attended the first class there that was giving at Stanford Law School, the first class on regulating artificial intelligence. And there was this big project at the end of the class, which was to write a research paper on artificial intelligence policy or regulation, etc. It was very wide open, and I was. First, I'm an international lawyer by training, so I have practiced international law the past few years, and I was going to write a paper on artificial intelligence and international law. And I didn't find any international treaty, any meaningful instrument, any sort of organization doing work in that. And I was like, okay, this is a big topic, why there's no international work in this? And so I took a step back and I started analyzing and mapping what countries were doing back then in 2018. So there were only a few national AI strategies. I analyzed them, and that really brought me into deeply researching what was going on worldwide on artificial intelligence policy. And then I took other courses on AI. I even almost took a class on Python. I really got interested into this, and and now the work that I'm doing here at the OECD is basically what I was doing back at Stanford, but now, let's say, with a more hands-on experience in the real world, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about in a few minutes.
Excellent, thank you so much. Different stories, very interesting to hear. So now we can jump into what Laura has already started a bit to introduce, which is this topic of policy and artificial intelligence. And we are going to have our first interventions, first contributions for each of our speakers. And then we are going to have a few questions and answers. And if you in the virtual audience have some questions, you're of course welcome to ask them as well. So we would like to start with you, Irina, our Brussels neighbor, because you're with the activities you're doing at the European Commission. We see that over the past years and months you've been very busy. And we see that what you are doing is can have like a lot of impact on the AI community and the AI world. And we would be very curious to start with to know a bit better what has been the main work and the main initiatives of the European Commission for artificial intelligence, and if you could give us an update, because I know there are some activities going on right now.
Yes, thank you. So the European Commission has been supporting the research side of artificial intelligence now for more than 15 years. Since 2004, we have been supporting different research projects. But to think about the policy side more in depth, we started about 3 years ago. And in April 2018, we adopted for the first time a strategy, AI for Europe. That strategy being based mainly on 3 pillars. The first one, competitiveness, investment. The second one, the socioeconomic background, the future of work, the impact on society. And the third pillar, the legal and the ethical background. And since then, we have been working on the 3 pillars in parallel. And all this came now with the new commission to the publication of the white paper on artificial intelligence in February this year, on the 19th of February. The paper was then put forward to consultation until mid of June. And well, I get back to that in a second. So this white paper has 2 main parts. One is the ecosystem of excellence. So ecosystem of excellence, how can we boost AI? How can we promote AI? What can we do in terms of research, in terms of skills, in terms of cooperation, all kinds of different aspects, really to push the development forward. How can we cooperate with member states? How can we create a maximum of synergies? But also about things we are doing in terms of international cooperation. And there we are closely working with OECD, for example. And then the second part is the ecosystem of trust. So we believe that those 2, the ecosystem of excellence and of trust, need to go hand in hand. And we can push the excellence when people trust artificial intelligence, when they're ready to use it, when they're happily and confidently doing so. And this is not only, but also in Europe, sometimes an issue, because if I look, for example, at my German compatriots, there are loads of concerns with regard to privacy, with regard to fundamental rights, and not only there, in many European countries. So these are things we also need to approach, and we need to approach them hand in hand with the excellence. So our baseline argument in this white paper is AI is good. AI is good, it needs to be supported, it needs to be boosted, but indeed it also creates some risks to consumers, to business, public interest, also some risks for Europe just to be somewhere behind because people don't want to trust AI, don't want to work with it, have a more conservative approach. And then there are some well justified concerns with regard to safety and with regard to fundamental rights. So all this we put forward, and we met some proposals and put forward some ideas on how for this ecosystem of trust one could possibly regulate AI. We had 1,250 replies to the white paper, which also for European standards is a lot. We had replies worldwide, 84% from the EU. We had around 30% citizens, 30% of respondents were business and industry, and then some 13% academia, some 11% NGO, and the rest diverse, for example, governments. So there is a lot of stuff to read, to go through, to analyze, and to put this in what we want to propose in terms of regulation. So what we did propose, what we are going through, is very much built on the work of a high-level expert group we had for the last 2 years. They were working on ethical guidelines for trustworthy AI. They were also working on policy and investment recommendations. This is one of the bases. Then when it comes to the public consultation, there were a couple of main concerns. For example, 90% of people were afraid of a breach of fundamental rights. 87% were afraid of discriminatory outcomes, and only 3% think that the current legislation is fully sufficient. So all this together, we have plenty of things to reflect on. What is clear to us is that we don't want to regulate all artificial intelligence, but we really want to have an approach focusing on high-risk applications. So only really the super risky ones we want to regulate, and we want to do that with a minimum burden for companies, and in particular with a minimum burden for small and medium-sized companies. We were thinking of a number of requirements, again, based on the work of the high-level expert group. Requirements with regard to artificial intelligence, regarding the training data. And here I think we have an important issue when it comes to the question of discrimination, bias, women and AI, about obligations to keep the data, but also to keep records regarding the development of the AI, about information to be provided to the users of the artificial intelligence, about robustness and accuracy of systems, and about human oversight. And for those, again, high-risk applications, we think of regulating. This could then be subject to an ex-ante conformity assessment. So all this is currently under discussion. We will be having a big AI Alliance assembly on the 9th of October. I invite everybody to be there, to register and to discuss with us. And there we would like to present our preliminary thinking and really discuss with everybody on what is the best way to regulate AI, but also, again, what is the best way to support an ecosystem of excellence. So this is happening on the 9th of October, and then we would be proposing, the Commission would be proposing some legislation, possibly in the beginning of the next year. So that's the current plan, but under the current circumstances, we never know what's going to happen. So this is what we are currently dealing with.
Thank you, Irina. And this event on the 9th of October is going to take place online. It's going to be a virtual event, I assume. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. So we can perhaps share the details after the event. Thank you so much. And for those of you who have questions, we can go back, of course, to them later on. So here, Laura, I'm going to give you the floor, and you're going to rely on me to show you the slides, because for those who have don't know, Laura is connected from her phone, and so I will be your slide master. So Irina mentioned the work and the coordination at international level with OECD. So I think, and I was quite surprised personally over the past months. Perhaps your work has been going for a longer time, but to see the role of OECD and really the efforts you're making in that field of artificial intelligence and the different activities you're setting up. And I think that's really great that we have you today as well to shed the light on those initiatives and perhaps the best practices as well. You have identified as part of your work. So I go full screen and I leave you the floor.
Thank you so much, Ségolène, and thank you so much for also helping me with the slides. So let's get into it. I'm just gonna be very brief, and I'm going to share with you the main topics and the main areas and activities we're doing here at the OECD, particularly as part of the Committee on Digital Policy and Artificial Intelligence. So I'm gonna talk today about the OECD Principles, the OECD Policy Observatory, and the OECD Network of Experts on AI, how they interact, how one informs and the other, and how this is really a symbiotic relationship on which the idea is to, as Irina was saying, to ensure that the development and deployment of AI is trustworthy. So can we move to the next slide, please? So what you see in the map is basically the number of countries that have adhered to the OECD principles. So the OECD principles were adopted in May 2018 by 36 OECD countries and 6 partner countries. And then in June 2018, the G20 leaders committed to these principles. And this is very important because this provides the beginning of a global policy and ethical benchmark if you consider the geographic breadth and the economic role of the G20 countries. Also, you can see in this map that there are many countries that ideally will be part of this conversation, and those are, let's say, the players that are missing there. But that's it. The OECD wants really to bring countries to these standard and ethical, and also for these policy recommendations. The goal here, and if we move to the next slide, please, is to recognize the need for AI systems to provide an inclusive benefit to everyone that is affected, to foster a policy ecosystem for trustworthy AI that benefits people and the planet. And it's similar. You can see some sort of like similarities between what Irina was saying with regards to the ecosystem of trust and ecosystem of excellence. It's kind of the same logic. Here in the OECD principles, there are 2 set of, let's say, principles. The first set of principles are the value-based principles, where the idea is to promote a responsible stewardship of trustworthy AI and inform AI actors on how to deliver on that promise of trustworthy AI, to promote inclusive growth, sustainable development, and well-being, ensure human-centered values and fairness, transparency, and explainability of AI-based systems, the robustness, security, and safety, and accountability. How the redress is ensured for citizens, for people, to really harness the best of AI systems. And then the second part of the OECD principles deals with national policies and international cooperation for trustworthy AI. So these recommendations try to foster AI by encouraging countries to invest in AI research and development, foster a digital ecosystem for AI, and that is policies on data sharing, policies on digital infrastructure, policies for high computing power, policies also for the data security and all broader issues around a digital ecosystem. The third recommendation deals with enabling a policy environment for AI, and that has to do with how to move research on AI, fundamental research, and also applied research to transfer that knowledge into AI applications that serve, again, people and the planet for good. So how can we ensure that the highest uptake by small medium enterprises when it comes to AI, how we ensure a regulatory framework that works with to promote AI, but also with tackling all these issues that we are all aware of them: discrimination, bias, and so on and so forth, and harm and the rest of harms. And the fourth recommendation deals with building human capacity and preparing for the labor transformation. And this has to do with all those debates in the future of work. It has to do with how we ensure education at all levels on AI, how we ensure public awareness of AI, how we promote vocational training, lifelong learning opportunities for people, and how we really overall ensure that there are activities and policies towards the reskilling and upskilling of the population so that no one is left behind. And the fifth recommendation deals with international cooperation. And international corporations, in not only in terms of how, as part of a let's say broader AI governance environment, different institutions interact with each other, but also at an international level, how countries cooperate in a myriad of areas, such as research and development. They cooperate also in regulatory frameworks. They cooperate in exchanging different, let's say, different views on AI, and also how they shape new policies at the international level. Here, the dialogue has been established, as we will see in a couple of seconds, with other international players that are also dealing with aspects of AI policy and aspects of AI, let's say, regulation. And here we are part of the conversations with the Council of Europe and seeking and mapping what's the regulatory framework all over countries, and how perhaps to come up with an international instrument to ensure that AI systems respect rule of law and democracy. Also, we're part of all the work that UNESCO is doing with their draft instrument for ethical AI. We are, of course, working with other international institutions such as the World Bank, the International Development Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, with the FERLAC initiative for Latin America, and all these players, all these AI stakeholders, and how we're all informed to really ensure that at the international level, we're also cooperating and not duplicating any kind of work. If we move, please, to the next slide. So the observatory, and here I put a picture of an observatory that it's an astronomical observatory. And that's kind of like a nice metaphor to see how the OECD AI Observatory has a role in this broader ecosystem of AI, because the idea is to really look at the complex or the complexity of AI activities, regulations, actors, policies, data, trends, AI publications, AI skills, statistics, and really bring all that level of complexity to simplicity, accessible, make it a whole set of data points accessible primarily for policymakers, so that we can make sense of all this data and make sense for the purposes of shaping and enabling, let's say, more data-driven discussions and more effective decision-making at the different national levels and international level. So that's the whole idea of the observatory, to shed light on these big discussions and in a timely basis. So if you would move to the next slide, please. What's interesting about the observatory is how it is structured in 4 pillars. So how the observatory, let's say, catalyzes this big effort to bring complexity to simplicity and make it accessible. It brings the AI principles and their implementation, and that's part of pillar 1 of the observatory. Pillar 2 deals with AI public policy topics and policy analysis in areas ranging from health to transportation and agriculture. And here, this sectorial analysis is very important because it will give us the data on what countries are doing with respect to those specific policy areas, but also which are the publications, what's the work, what are the AI publications and research on applications that affect those specific policy areas. The third pillar deals with AI trends and data to anchor policies in evidence. And here we're bringing together with the partnerships that the OECD Policy Observatory has. So those are, for instance, data with LinkedIn to try to map how is the AI skills penetration across countries, people that have the skills on AI and data analysis, and let's say a broader set of skills on AI. So the data there measures how AI is distributed when it comes to AI talent. Then there's also a cooperation with the Slovenia and the Research Center of AI, managed by Marko Grubelnik, and there we have AI news, live AI news that also measures sentiment, just to map the different, let's say, developments and latest updates on AI by country, and this is AI powered. And last but not least, perhaps the one that you're most interested in, is the pillar 4. So if we move to the next slide, please, is the pillar 4 deals with countries and initiatives by both national governments and all stakeholders. So here, and this has been, remember that I told you at the beginning how I was conducting research on these and mapping, was being more a cartographer in that sense, on what was going on in different countries. This is the materialization of that big effort. And here, of course, thanks to all the countries that have participated and have vetted this data, we have to get today more than 300 AI policy initiatives from all over 60 countries, including the European Union, and clustered or shown in a way that you can see there are different dashboards, as say part of the second screen, and that makes that level of complexity more accessible to be subject to analysis by policymakers and for researchers and for people in general. So who are the addressees of these policies? What type of policies are we talking about? What are the budgets? What are the priorities? So I invite you all to visit www.oecd.ai and go to see how your country features. All the feedback is more than welcome. So please, if you see something, just let me know. We're constantly improving. If we move to the next slide, please. So now this is the second big activity of the OECD, and with that I will wrap what we're doing with the OECD Policy Observatory. Everything that we're doing at the OECD is going to be reflected there. So that's the entry point for the work of the OECD, the Observatory. So another activity that was launched also at the same time the Observatory was launched was the OECD Network of Experts on AI. So the OECD Network of Experts on AI is an advisory group that is organized now in 3 working groups. I'm not going to enter into details, but just to mention that it's a multi-stakeholder group with multidisciplinary members appointed by governments, but also leaders from business that deployed AI systems, also civil society and academia. And all these members, what they're doing is they're helping to make sense of all the repository and all the data that is in the Policy Observatory. So to see trends, to see how countries are implementing these principles and select lessons learned, but also best practices to later report on those findings and give us more insights into what's going on and what needs to improve, what needs to be highlighted, and so on and so forth. Here also we have members as part of this broader international discussion members from the Council of Europe, the European Union, the Inter-American Development Bank, World Bank, United Nations, UNESCO, and many other international players. So that's roughly the what's the composition and the objective of the network of experts. If we move to the next slide, please. Here we see the 3 working groups that are part of this OECD network of experts. We call it OneAI. It's the acronym for OECD network of experts. So the first working group deals with or the objective there is to develop a user-friendly classification framework for AI systems, and this is going to be super useful because the OECD has and the European Union, we have already defined more or less what an AI system is, but we need more. We need more tools to really understand what we're talking about and how to make sense of the complexity of AI systems. So the idea here is to classify them. So with the best experts that are out there, the OECD Working Group 1 is working on developing this framework to see and compare the different types of AI applications and the consideration for these different types. And this is undoubtedly going to help policymakers when producing targeting or targeted regulation, as Irina was talking about, producing targeted recommendations on AI policy, and so on and so forth. Now the second group, the working group on bribery and implementing trustworthy AI, has the objective and the mandate to identify the practical guidance and to help policymakers and AI actors on how to implement the value-based principles. So remember those value-based principles that I talked to you at the beginning. I told you were the inclusiveness, keeping human in the loop, human-centered, transparency, explainability, accountability. So the idea there is to see how AI actors all over the world are implementing these based on a survey that is being conducted as part of this working group, and make sense of which are good examples and what are they doing based on different use cases. So that's gonna come up out of this working group. And the third working group deals with national AI policies. So the third working group, I'm the closest to this working group. And here what we're doing with experts, particularly members from governments, is to invite them to share with us their experiences on the bodies that they have created, how has been the policy design, how has been the formal consultations and all the processes that inform AI policy. Also, how they are bringing those policy recommendations, those 5 that I told you, the second part of the OCDE principles, how are they implementing them? And there, what we're already seeing, and this is going to be part of a report next year, the different strategies, how they're materializing into practice, and how countries are monitoring also those efforts as part of their policy evaluations. So sorry for that. I'm gonna close basically just with an invitation.
The last one. Yeah.
And the idea here is that this is a global conversation beyond experts, beyond working groups, and all these, let's say, different levels of complexity and expertise. We really need people we need to raise awareness, and we're inviting people to join this conversation, to follow what's going on, and one of the, let's say, most pedagogical activities we have, it's the AI Walk, and the AI Walk really encapsulates what different countries are doing and how they're doing that. So I invite you all to visit the AI Walk, but not only visit and participate, but also contribute. So if you have let's say research on these, please help us and send us an email to ai@oecd.org and join this work. So that's my next slide, and yeah, feel free to reach out. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Laura. So again, another opportunity for many of us to get involved, and yes, I think that when I look at the list of your network of experts, it may be beneficial indeed, maybe like a mutual sharing of expertise to have experts from other fields such as the corporate world or academic world. Perhaps you have some of them already, but there can be some interesting things there. So we will give this information when we wrap up again, because I think it's a really good opportunity. And Eline has accepted as well to be present tonight because Eline has a unique view as a public affairs expert specialized on artificial intelligence and digital policy about what are what are the elements at stake, what are the different policy initiatives that have an impact on artificial intelligence, and you've accepted to give us your view, not as policymaker but as policy participant, policy influencer, policy expert, policy representative, about what is going on and what we should know, basically. So the floor is yours. We can't hear you.
Thank you, Ségolène. I come in peace. I've interacted with Irina many times before, and we responded to the Commission's consultation. But tonight is more an overview I wanted to provide on why are we talking so much about AI, what is required for countries to harness that potential. I'm going to talk about the race to AI and also the race to AI regulation and some of the alternatives suggested. So why does AI matter? There are maybe 6 technologies that look like good candidates for what is known as the innovation wave. You have IoT, the Internet of Things, advanced robotics, blockchain, new materials, and autonomous devices, and AI. And some factors, including the recent growth in computing power and progress in algorithms, have turned AI into what is said to be the most strategic technology at the moment, moving from the age of discovery to implementation. And the technology now offers so many tremendous benefits and opportunities for efficiency, especially in healthcare, for instance, with the discovery of new drugs, but also financial services with the fraud detection, and the energy sector by increasing energy efficiency. So many countries and companies understand that this has potential now, and it has, it can offer innovation advantage. So many are racing to seize that opportunity to enhance societal progress and economic prosperity for themselves. And some of you might have come across Vladimir Putin's quote, who said 3 years ago that whoever becomes the leader in the sphere will be the ruler of the world. So geopolitically, and actually more or less since then, AI has really started to gain more influence in geopolitics, political economy, economic diplomacy. And this is also why many are talking about a technological race. Now, just like your body needs food, muscles, and energy to run, each country has strengths and bottlenecks to develop that technology and responsibly unlock its full potential. To do that, you need to master skilled workforce, optimize the use of data for AI. So you need it in quantity, but also quality. You have to make sure data is representative and diverse enough. You need to encourage and have sufficient private and public research and development and investment. You need to build computing capacity. You need good technical standards, and you need to gain public trust and positive attitudes toward AI. Now, not all countries perform equally well on all these aspects. So I'm going to briefly brush over how all the main protagonists are doing. So overall, the US leads in terms of AI talent, research and development, hardware. It has a big AI startup ecosystems, receives most of venture capital funding and private equity, leads in the development of semiconductors and computer chips that are essential to power AI systems. Now, it does produce less AI research papers than the EU and China, and has less overall AI talent than the EU. China leads in the adoption of AI by companies. I think it's 85% of its companies have adopted it, compared to 42% of European companies, according to a recent survey by the Commission. And China also leads in terms of the amount and availability of data because of its huge population, because of the number of individuals using mobile payment, really very much used there. China does not have as much high-quality AI talent compared to the US and Europe, but it is really closing the gap, and it's doubling down on its investment effort to leap over Western economies and to seek global AI dominance. It has a sophisticated national AI strategies allocating massive government funding to capture market share in AI. Finally, the EU does have good strength in talent and has a lot of AI researchers compared to China and the US, but it lags behind in funding and the adoption of commercial AI systems. If there's so much action in policy right now, it's because many are concerned about all. The former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, warned that as a percentage of GDP, US spending on scientific R&D has come to levels not seen since the pre-Sputnik era. Doesn't have a long-term plan to win the AI race, lacks government funding for basic research compared to China. And other warnings are being sent to Europe. I'm talking, for instance, about Kai-Fu Lee, who wrote the book AI Superpowers, and he said bluntly that Europe does not even have a good chance of getting a bronze medal in the AI competition. There's a problem that preoccupies the US and the EU. It's China. It's made it to international headlines by leveraging AI for surveillance as a surveillance technology for contact tracing. And the application of facial recognition by that government raises concerns about, how it is abusing human rights. And it's been scaling up its schemes for tracking and monitoring citizens. So we cannot ignore that there's a discomfort regarding how the technology is being used and deployed in China and the lack of alignment with democratic values. So it's a battle of values as well. Just speeding up through the race to AI regulation, who will win that race is still to be continued. But now the trends. There's a big policy conversation happening now about who will write the rules for AI. Will the winner of the AI race be the one that writes the rules of AI? Not necessarily, but the EU's response to that question is yes. The EU wants to become the world's first region to develop a rule book for AI, to create laws on the ways in which companies can develop that technology. So there's a lot of discussions happening. Still a lot of decisions have to be made. Some are worried there's too much of a high-level focus on ethics. Some are worried that the rules may be too tough on certain kinds of AI. Others, on the other hand, think that more types of AI systems should be subjected to tougher rules, and particularly biometrics and technologies like facial recognition. The EU is concerned. It's caught between China and the US and on its dependence on foreign providers of critical technology. So it really wants to carve out a third way between the US and China. And by developing its own standards, it believes that it will prevent Chinese AI from meeting those standards because these rules are, quite different from China. Some are calling the EU to involve partners and democratic allies, to pool resources, and to leverage on the growing consensus on the need for global norms and standards. And that will be important not to let China fill that void by setting the rules of the game and its own standards. The transatlantic relationship in particular could provide a solid foundation on which, US, Canada, EU, but the entire global partnership on AI actually formed by G7 countries and under the OECD's coordination, they're working on that. Finally, really briefly to conclude, how is the US looking at Europe is interesting because the US administration has been really trying to push back on European proposals to regulate AI. They really wanted to send a clear message that they prefer a light touch approach, a limited regulatory overreach, and really would prefer a hands-off approach to AI regulation. But they're worried about China's threat much more maybe than Europe, and so they decided to join GPAI because maybe it's better to be in the cockpit. The idea really of the GPAI is to establish norms and principles to counter authoritarian approaches like China. And that's, of course, in the US's interest. So there are many arenas wherein this could be discussed. The Council of Europe is also preparing some rules for AI. I think the conversation is far from over, but I will leave it to that. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Eline, for your your comments and your analysis on the situation. I see that time is running super fast, actually, and I have been told, and I have been said that we should really keep the timing. So we have to slowly wrap up. We have plenty of questions. I see the audience has some questions as well. I think one of the questions we wanted to discuss, but perhaps for another session, was really this question that we had about that we had on the chat about the link between policy making and the speed of policy making versus the speed of technology development, because we see that AI is going at a super fast pace, that research papers are published every day. So it's a challenge. Unfortunately, we don't have time to discuss it, So yeah, it's a teaser perhaps for another discussion. For those of you who are interested in this topic and who are listening to us, perhaps this calls for a follow-up exchange to go more in detail, because I think we have already had it provided us with the very good basis to understand what is going on, and I think it's a call for many of us to have like a more detailed review of those initiatives and the white paper, and perhaps have access to the contributions to the white paper if they are available. Take a look at the OECD work and perhaps contribute where necessary. So I would like to thank you. Thank you so much for your availability also tonight, because it's late. You could be watching Netflix or a European series or movies provider, but we should really follow up on what you said, Irina. Sorry, 9th of October, the AI Alliance event. And Laura, the work you're doing on the policy observatory, and the AI One, where everyone is welcome to contribute to the debate. So thank you so much. Yes,
Ségolène, can I just really briefly say that I've just heard from a post on LinkedIn that, because we might talk about diversity and AI in future discussions, that the fund called Arboris, they just launched an international label called GEEIS AI for companies. It's a seal showing that across the value chain in terms of use of AI in HR, there's no discrimination, and that quality is fine. I think that's one of the first kind, and I just wanted to mention it.
Okay, thank you. How is it called?
It's called GEIS AI. I will post it on the chat.
The best acronym of the evening. Thank you so much, Eline. Thank you so much, Irina. Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you to all of you who listen to us, and let's keep the conversation going on social networks. You are welcome to take a look at the Women in AI booth on the expo, so you can go on the left bar, and for those of you who are not members of Women in AI yet, it's a good opportunity to do so. Thank you so much, and let's see you very soon. Bye-bye. Have a very good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.